Aesthetic objectivity, some intimations. In that objectivity as such concerns independent self-determining being which stands and holds itself against external determinations of what it is, beauty as such attains to this in that its subject matters indeed concern independent self-determining dynamic structures or concepts which have an internal constitution that holds against the barrage of possible external applications and interpretations of this content. As an atom is not changed internally by its external relations, and an iguana remains what it is regardless of its external conditions, so long as they allow for its continued living, so too the beautiful is objective and holds against the imposition of alien determinations from the tasting subject. Beauty objects against our subjective whims to craft it, or to enjoy it merely by the chance that we have a taste for it, or by merely willing to accept it through some fiat of cognition. Objectivity demands that beauty stand and hold against such arbitrariness that it attain its determination from within whether we immediately recognize it or not. Such a grasp of beauty therefore requires a measure which is not to be grasped immediately in taste. There is a slightly mundane sense of aesthetic objectivity concerning artistic creation and appreciation. An artist, when truly inspired, is deeply aware that their piece is imperfect and incomplete, that it is erroneous, through both an intuition, such as in music or image or poetry, as well as a knowledge that something does not seem to follow in their work's progression, mostly in works with a story to tell, according to the already present flow of the work itself. The work somehow objects to the artist's whims and asserts its influence as inspiration that leads the artist in the right direction to find the presentation that is proper. On the side of the artistic critic, we find that there is a recognition that certain things do or do not seem to follow from the flow of a work of art. We have all had the experience of watching a movie or show and in certain events thinking, that doesn't make sense. Not because it's nonsense, but because it breaks the logic of the narrative elements itself. In Avatar, aka Graphics the movie, we have this happen many times. For example, at the beginning of the movie, the primitive aliens cannot harm the mechanized armored jets of the invading humans with their simple spears. Yet at the later end of the movie, we suddenly can, without any Let me read that. For example, at the beginning of the movie, the primitive aliens cannot harm the mechanized armored jets of the invading humans with their simple spears. Yet at the later end of the movie, they suddenly can, without any explanation. When an art piece breaks the very flow it has set up, it strikes us as incoherent unless it is apparent that such a break is in fact coherent in the end. A piece of classical music suddenly radically interjected by jazz or rap may confuse us not because such elements cannot go together, but because even after the piece is over, we may be left in confusion as to why this development appeared unexpected. A classical painting of the Renaissance era with strange elements which have no discernible explanation for being there, such as a modern caricature of an alien or a person in a spacesuit walking in the background in the streets of an everyday village in the 1600s, breaks not simply the expectation, but invites us to question why they are there when nothing else seems to connect them to the work. Such breaks in the logical flow or unity of an artwork cause a reaction to its jarring nature, and we do not return to a grasp of anything unless the work shows that this jarring presentation is part of the unifying concept of the piece. Sometimes both artist and critic may be confused as to just what the dynamic inner flow of a piece is, but it is somehow understood that nonetheless there is an inner flow, a logic or concept that can explain the piece's unity if only one could figure it out. My friends Hyperion and Joshua, being sonorati, tend to like pieces of music which otherwise sound like noise to the untrained ear, much like how certain books and films may seem like broken, disconnected elements to one who gives little attention or thought to the overarching concepts. Nonetheless, such seeming illogicality can properly be shown to be quite logical given the proper standpoint of comprehension and interpretation. Sometimes noise or insanity is the entire purpose of a piece. That is the concept it shows. That is its logic. Elements which seem out of place may, given the later developments which offer explanatory exposition in the right way, make sense despite their initial seeming nonsense, and so come into unity with that which they seemed to break. If we are lucky, unfortunately a big if, we come in our lives to encounter works of art which not only demand us to dig deeper, but which so thoroughly push themselves into us in our entering into their experience that we cannot help but desire to dig deeper upon their completion and the realization that a unifying concept informed it all along. This experience is literally ideal. We become as if one with a living artwork in its process of self-constitution and carry on its concretization further than the mere words, sounds, and images themselves can immediately do. The unity of the work raises the significance of its parts, and its parts in turn raise the significance of this whole in a mutual concretization of its increasing meaning. The end shines as a universal so thorough and concrete that it is like a flash of lightning, which shows in one fleeting moment the entire unity of a building constructed with utmost care and intricate detail, a structure where no individual piece is a mere random superfluousness. It is not incidental that the perfection of art is unreal and otherworldly, that it achieves its perfection in complete fiction where elements of our own historical world are transformed and reappear in a different guise so as to make their nature even clearer in their abstraction from everyday life, and so achieve an even greater concrete connection to our everyday life. This is a necessity in which history itself is not allowed externality as a shared cultural background, such as a World War II artwork, but becomes entirely immanent to an entire other world reflecting ours more truly than empirical reality itself. When this is achieved, the explanation of the artwork is almost entirely within it and becomes almost divine. It creates an absolute form which is its genesis and terminus. In other words, this castle appears with no sign of having been created by another, but to as if by magic always have been a creation of itself. The artist recedes from the frame of the work and is left out altogether, not as if dead, but as if they had never been but a myth, much like Homer. This absolute form, however, fails to achieve the most thorough universality by the very nature of art itself. Its connection to sensuousness bars the universal by being ultimately constrained by the resources of what can be imagined and portrayed with the medium of sensuous appearance itself, and this is further barred by the individual acculturation of taste and symbols. The failure to be fully and thoroughly universal, however, is also a mark of art's failure to be fully and thoroughly objective itself, for it is beholden for its being on other factors, and so its nature is not unchanged in contact with the external. As we complete experiencing one of these artworks, we find that until that final moment we have followed the story in its most immediate and general unity, but although present throughout, the details have gone unnoticed because we cannot slow down our experience, and we have not yet witnessed the whole in which these details are purposive parts. A Voyage to Arcturus by David Lindsay is a shining example of such a work in which the ending is almost unforeseeable if one is not externally knowledgeable of its theme, yet once witnessed, one has an immediate grasp that the meaning of the work's details must be gone over at least a second time with the light of the ending. The meaning of this story is virtually self-contained, such that everything for its expansion of meaning is entirely at hand in the story and the elements it put forth itself. The work of art here begins to do the seemingly impossible. It becomes the bridge to its own transcendence as art in the pleasure of the senses by forming a link to the pleasure of ideas. What begins as mere vague intuition of natural beauty traverses all the structural dynamic forms of artistic beauty and its ways of embodying meaning, and at last arrives at its absolute pinnacle in the infinite and absolute artwork. The infinite artwork is infinite in two senses. First, it is not bound externally by any source of determination for its form or content. Second, it is infinitely determinable from within. That is, it is a vehicle of infinite meaning where all interpretations are immanent to the very aesthetic work. The very aesthetic world the work itself has posited in its differentiated unity, a meaning that is not general and abstract, but at each point concrete to every historical moment and place, while not once violating the unity of the work in which such meaning is inherent. These infinite artworks are the immortal, the eternal, the inextinguishable light of spirit to which people of all ages can look to and find truth in for all time. Taste and objective beauty. The only moments in which we seem to want to deny this objectivity strongly concern beauty in modes which are the least explicable, the ones which have the least to be said about them for the very reason that they are able to say less as beautiful things themselves. The judgments regarding their value and beauty are here indeed recognized rightly as being mostly subjective for many reasons. The beauty of a color or color combinations, of the serene waters of a still lake, of the lone cloud in the sky, of the grass flowing as the waters of the ocean in the noon breeze, of the simple dandelion floating in the wind, of simple melodies whistling in the wind. Such forms of beauty of themselves mean nothing, yet produce in us... Such forms of beauty of themselves mean nothing, yet produce in us a pleasure we do not immediately understand. What truly is the nature of this experience? One that is purposeless and sheer bliss of being in its experience and contemplation. In its moment, it is everything. It is truth and the reason for existence itself. Taste has not erred, it cannot err, for what it corresponds to is always a truth. The question is what level of truth it attains in the concrete truth. Taste itself is not what recognizes this. It only intuits it. We know neither why nor how the phenomenon comes to affect us, and we are puzzled when others cannot perceive it. Because of this, we reason that the source of this phenomenon must be entirely within the subject, yet we know not why this is so or even how it really is so. We say tastes are subjective, yet we find ourselves to not be the source of these determinations as conscious or willing beings. That is, as subjects, we find nothing subjective about such matters, nothing to be done about them. Unlike reasoning, we cannot simply take another standpoint of taste and appreciate the difference of taste towards the same object. Taste is not subjective as perspective or whim is subjective. Taste is the subject's manifest essence in the realm of desire. Taste does not reveal what I choose to desire, rather, like desire itself, it reveals what I am as a subject of activity. Beauty, and this is most clear in art, also reveals what the truth is when freed to be pure appearance without the mechanical mediation of nature's bodies and laws. Beauty is a sensuous embodiment of freedom, of self-determination and constitution. This freedom is the essence, which is determinately appearing in all beauty, from sunsets to tragedies, from the lilies of the fields to the stories of a glorious dawn of the eternal day of heaven, from the burning cities that show externally the wastelands of our souls to the torturous hells which objectively manifest our deepest guilt. All of these are free creations, free associations, free appearances that come together naturally as rocks come together through gravity. The gravity of beauty which draws it and maintains it together, however, is the free concept, which is itself the concept of freedom, freely coming to its freedom. In the concept we find the unity of appearance, reason, freedom, and determination from the outset. One need not know where one is going, but once there, one shall know one was always going there, and the reason why. One shall know that for individual paths the one tread could be no other, and yet one desires that it be no other. For were it another, it would not be free. Were it another, the artistic inspiration would be shackled. Were it another, it simply would not be true to itself. It would not be real. It would not be objective. And it would not be ideal.